and it is on contemplative-based resilience for humanitarians. So how to deal as a humanitarian with this kind of stress.
Thanks a lot.
Yes.
And thank you, everybody, for coming,
Where
really
shall
and
I go?
truly. It's a really hard act to follow, all of these amazing stories. But I want to tell this story because of people like Sia, Godfrey, Omar. You deserve my best. And I come to tell this story to you today because there are two sets of people, if we can put up the presentation, there are two sets of people in this world that deserve my best. One is my family. And they have suffered for the last 20 years because I've been a humanitarian. And what I realize is through their suffering, is that they weren't the only ones that were suffering because of me. Being a humanitarian in the field for the last 20 years, I could see that over time, my work was diminishing. I wasn't being the best that I could be for the people that I was there to serve. So not only was I failing at home, I was failing in my job, and I couldn't figure out why, and I didn't see it. I didn't see it in any way, shape, or form because every single person that I was with was exactly like me. Every humanitarian I was with in the field was exactly like me. On the way to a broken family, on the way to being an alcoholic, on the way to being a drug user, or just completely depressed and not understanding what was wrong because I was so passionate about who I am and so passionate about what I was doing that I had missed out on what was really important. And that was that I needed to be well to serve well. And what I realized is that my friends and I, the people that I work with, were not well, and we are not well. And I know it's very, very, very selfish to talk about this in front of you because we've heard these amazing stories of people like Sia and Godfrey. We've heard these stories about Omar and how he's able to deal with his trauma after suffering through so much. I know it sounds selfish, but in reality, when the only people that are there to help those that are in dire need are not well, they do more harm than good. If any of you are in the humanitarian sector, we have a mantra. You know, much like many other transcendental meditation therapists and so on, they use a mantra. Ours is do no harm. But what I'm going to show you tonight is that actually humanitarians in many, many ways do more harm than good because they are not well. And I want to ask you this question, and I want you to go home and ask yourself this question. And Minister Kag, as well as everyone else over the last 2 days, have been able to help us get to this question. But can humanitarians serve well when they are also suffering? And I would posit to you that the answer is no, and it is a forgotten crisis in the humanitarian sector, so much so that hundreds of millions of dollars are being lost. People are dying, not the humanitarians themselves, but people we are serving are dying because of our inability to be well and serve well. I call it the story of the thirds. There's been a lot of research done around this, so this is not just me coming up with stories. I can share with you the data if you'd like. But the first piece of data is something that's really stark to me. 1/3 of humanitarians in the field suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. Let me not put that as an acronym for you. Let me just spell it out. Post-traumatic stress disorder. Does anyone have an idea of how many people that left the Afghanistan war with the United States military, how many of them were diagnosed with PTSD? 11%. Humanitarians as a whole that work in crisis situations, internationals, mind you, not national staff, which is a completely other forgotten crisis, 1/3, almost 33% suffer from PTSD. What does that do? How does PTSD manifest itself in humanitarian situations when you're there? Because to be honest, you carry your PTSD to your next deployment. We heard Maria talk. She goes from deployment to deployment. Myself, I went from Haiti to the Philippines, from the Philippines to Indonesia, from Indonesia to Tunisia, Tunisia to Libya, Libya to back to Haiti again because Haiti is endemic with crisis, then to South Sudan and to Sudan. I carried all of this with me. So it's not post-traumatic, it's constant traumatic stress disorder. And so my impact in the field is reduced by a third. Do you know why? Because I spend the first third of my day recovering from my hangover, and the second third of my day figuring out with all of my friends where we're going to go and share war stories later. At the same time, I spend the first 4 months of my 1 year in the field recovering from my last deployment. I spend 4 months of doing work, and then I start to go down again. And then what do? I work myself out of a job so that I can find another job, so I spend the last 4 months of my deployment looking for the next job. The culture in our work is not to help those that are serving others, but to get them to the next crisis as quickly as possible because they're foolish enough to go. Most of the people that realize that they're suffering leave immediately. That's why we have enormous problems with staff retention, enormous problems with staff turnover in the humanitarian sector. The last third is your efficiency. If you're tired at work, how efficient are you, right? You slowly, your work efficiency degrades over a period of time. I have certain colleagues that have spent 8 years in South Sudan as international staff. No one can tell me that that person can actually think straight about what they're doing. Imagine if you were a person from South Sudan working to help the people of South Sudan, and you've been suffering from war and crisis your whole life. How are you truly able to be as effective as you could be after suffering so much? The realities here is what we see is that mental health is the number one reason that humanitarian crises, I believe, last longer than they ever should. We don't address the needs of people's minds so they cannot be effective in the field where they're working. Minister Kag, you heard other people in the first video that they showed. What did they say? It is life-saving to do this. And the reason why is because sick people can't help other sick people. We have good groups. We need well people so that they can help sick people. Just on costs, I'll give you an example of a $100 million program. Many humanitarian programs are much bigger than this. But this is just using that theory of 1/3. Okay? So if we put in $100 million into a humanitarian program, about 16 million of that money is misspent or not spent well because the staff implementing that program is not well. 25 million is lost in the field because of people not working the same amount of hours that they should be working, or people not working effectively enough in the field where they're supposed to be working, or people not being able to think innovatively enough to change the way that they're doing things, pivot when they need to, react when they need to certain situations, be able to predict what's going to happen next and amend their programming to fit those needs. They can't do that. So that money is misspent. But last but not least is a figure that we don't budget for, which is staff retention. Many organizations that are operating right now in South Sudan usually hire people on a 3-year contract. The average person, international staff that goes to South Sudan right now to function is lasting for 12 months. That means they have to hire another staff and another staff. It takes about 5 months to hire one staff. So what do? They bring in a separate staff to come in and take over for 3 months or 6 weeks. And then they have to bring in another staff to cover for the next person until that other person decides to come, and then they last 12 months and then leave again. And this process continues to roll over and over and over. The inefficiencies of humanitarian understanding of their needs is directly related to their inability to help those that are in need. Godfrey said it right. We cannot stick people that are sick to help others. We cannot stick people that are uneducated to help the educated. It's not just about your drive. It's also about the other parts of your life that are very important to take care of if we're assisting those that are in dire need.
Chris.
Yes.
Yeah. It's very interesting.
Sure.
Yeah.
My timer hasn't even gone off yet.
No, but I know more's coming.
I have 2 more minutes.
Yeah, definitely.
And you didn't do that to anybody else.
Yes.
38% of humanitarians suffer from anxiety disorders. 39% suffer from depression. 79% suffer from mental health issues of which 93% say it's because of their work. Now it's 10 minutes. Oh, no, it's still 10 minutes. There we go. Okay, 30 more seconds. Organizations have a responsibility to take care of their staff so that they can take care of those that they're serving. And right now, that's not happening. A recent report from the United Nations, OCHA, and everybody might know OCHA, but the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, showed that no UN agencies in total have a duty of care policy. Not one. There's a lot that can be done. My organization that I work with is called the Garrison Institute. We're a global organization that provides contemplative resilience, which really centers around yoga, mindfulness, and psychosocial support to humanitarians. I'm not really here to market what we're doing. I'm actually here to talk to you. If we can go back one slide. I'm here to talk to you about the issues that all humanitarians face and that needs to be addressed. So I want to say thank you very much. And I want to say thank you to all of you. Your stories have touched me like you can never imagine. And I also want to say that I'm sorry that all of us can't operate the way that we're supposed to. But I want to thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Chris. I think it was very honest and thought-provoking what he said. We've heard so many interesting stories, interesting perspectives, also very difficult and hard stories to process. Thank you for your attention. And I think we're going to wrap up. This was it for tonight. Thank you very much.